Hi, welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michele. This is the show where we talk about exceptional human encounters, the people who make them happen, and the actions that it takes to create them. Now, this episode is going to be a special episode all dedicated to joy. And I say joy, but we're going to talk about pain too, because you can't always have joy. You got to go through some pain to really experience and really value that joy. So we're going to have a little bit of pain in there, but we're going to mostly stay in the joy zone. So speaking of that, I want to share something with you that has brought me tremendous amounts of joy lately, and I've been seeking it out. I'll have to tell you this. I see a lot of things in the world that are happening that do not bring me joy, that I'm concerned about, that I wish that I could do more about, that I'm trying to figure out how I can do more about. And I know that sometimes that brings me way down, and I know you guys feel that too. It feels kind of helpless sometimes to figure out what you're supposed to be doing when you see things that are wrong happening in the world. And I believe, and you've heard me say this before, that we need a little joy in our tank to really be able to handle some of that stuff and to really bring love into the equation and make good decisions. So this thing that's brought me a lot of joy recently is this little green character. He's about 8 inches high. His name is the Tiny Chef. He has a whole channel called the Tiny Chef Show on YouTube, and I am in love with the Tiny Chef. So let me tell you about him. So first of all, the Tiny Chef is vegan. He loves to cook. He makes little apple pies and vegetable food and awesome cocktails. He's always cooking, and he's always humming a little song. He speaks his own language. I'm starting to understand what he says, and it's just awesome. It's so happy. Every time I watch a video, it's just like the right thing that I need just to kind of lift me out of a place, and I so appreciate it. I appreciate that there's people in the world putting together this kind of creative content so we can take a little break from the tough stuff. What else can I tell you about Tiny Chef? So I'm a fan, so that means I'm a mother chefer. That's what this shirt says. I'm a mother chefer. So all fans are called mother chefers. And what else is so awesome about him? You gotta watch it. Just watch it and tell me what you think. But I love him, and I want to talk to him right now and the whole team that's behind the Tiny Chef Show. You guys have an open invitation to come on the show, all of you. Rachel, Tiny Chef calls her Rachel. I think that I translated that well. Rachel, Ozzy, Jason, Adam, Steven, the voice coach, any one of you, if you ever want to come on the show, you have an open invitation, because I love what you're doing. I love that you're putting joy out in the world, and I want to give anybody that's doing that a platform to speak and tell me, what motivates you. So you're always welcome. And just so you know that I'm clear about that open invitation, Tiny Chef has a little chair here reserved specially for him anytime he wants to come on. Now, I know, buddy, you probably like something that's a little bit more natural and soft for you, little tushy, and we're working on finding something better. But for now, this will symbolize your space here. And we do these shows live for a reason. It's because we believe in being accountable and not augmenting reality. But Chef, I know that might not be your thing, and we'll make accommodations for you and your team if you want to do something else. So I hope to see you soon. You're my tiny green crush, and I love you. So speaking of joy, hey, if you're watching, along with chat on YouTube right now, tell me what sparks joy in your life. What makes you happy? What's the thing that you go back to all the time that just brings you back into joy? I'd love to hear about that. Now, speaking of joy, my guest knows all about joy. He is a joy magnet. So joining me today in the studio is Elijah McCauley. Jeez, come on, help me.
Malachi.
I asked you for the show, and now I'm all tongue-tied. I think I'm blushing from revealing my green crush. Yeah. That's what I'm feeling right now. I'm like, I'm so vulnerable.
So you're not crushing on me?
I'm crushing on you too, Elijah.
It's fine. Tiny Chef, I got it. It's fine. No competition. I get it.
I got space for everybody. I am feeling a little hot, though. I have to tell you. It's heating up in here. Well, let's meet Elijah, okay? Elijah is gifted in helping people navigate and overcome life's pains. Elijah holds certifications in adult learning and curriculum design and has served as a director of training for large multinational franchises and several enterprises. He is a master mindset and empowerment coach, engagement speaker, and soon-to-be author. We're going to talk about his new book, Pain's Promise. Yeah, it's coming out. And he really believes in leveraging life's deepest challenges to unlock power and from incredible pain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm really hot.
Woo!
Maybe it's you now.
It could be me.
Like,
yeah,
I'm
no.
really
I do have that impact on people sometimes.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Do you know about the Tiny Chef?
I do not. This is my first introduction to the Tiny Chef.
Yeah,
so.
I think you'll dig it.
Okay.
You're going to have to watch it.
Yeah, I will, for sure.
All right. Well, tell me, so you self-identify as a joy magnet.
100%.
Tell me about that. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so pain is the opposite of joy. Joy is the opposite of pain. And for me, joy is something that is a choice.
Yeah.
You know, you can go through crazy, difficult, challenging things and still have joy.
Yeah.
Happiness is more circumstantial, right? Happiness is peaks and valleys, and it's based on an external event 9 times out of 10, right? Something happens to me and now I'm happy.
Yeah.
Where joy is an internal event. And joy, I think, is something that we can own, master, cultivate.
Switch on and off.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat you can.
Yeah.
Because it's mindset based.
Yeah.
Joy has nothing to do with your circumstances.
Yeah.
I believe joy has everything to do with how you cultivate your inner practice around your belief system.
Yeah.
And so, that's in a nutshell, but there's a lot more to dig out there.
Well, so let's go back into childhood.
Yeah.
And Elijah was young. Like, what did you learn about joy? Like, where did this start to come? And we can talk about joy and pain, because I think those are both lessons that you probably have picked up on and have changed over life. But what did you learn about joy first?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the way that joy worked out in my life is because I received so much pain. Mm-hmm. And I needed something to survive. Mm-hmm. I needed something to really capture my heart, or else I would have just frayed out and been a crazy person based on the circumstances that happened in my life. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, you know, I read very early on a lot of books, and I was the kid that, you know, would come home after school and watch Oprah and learn from one of the masters about mindset, you know, and I'm talking 13, 15, all those types of things. But in terms of joy, like, I had a very internal practice at a very young age. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting down at the piano and kind of teaching myself to play, just based on the fact that I didn't have a lot of external things that brought happiness. So how did I cultivate and create internal joy? Now, I'm not talking about Christmas and birthdays and, you know, these types of things. I'm just talking about, like, everyday life. Yeah. You know, and the circumstances of my life didn't necessarily predicate, anyway.
Yeah. Did you think, and maybe you might have to give an example so we can understand, you know, what were those situations, but did you kind of get a sense for, okay, there's these things that are happening that are out of my control. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that I can do about it. So I'm going to learn how to play the piano, or I'm going to do something else that, I mean, I can't control that. I can put something else in my tank, you know, and participate in whatever's going on in a different way. Did you get a sense that, like, I can't control that? Like,
So very early on, it became about things that I could control and things that did bring me joy. Mm-hmm. And I think, right, to be frank, earlier on, there wasn't this big practice around, regardless of my circumstances. When you're 10 years old and you're 15, you're like, you don't have a practice for that, right? But I think how I framed it was through kind of a happiness track. So anything that brought me happiness is where I spent my time, you know, and I did that for most of my life. So piano was one of those things. I would sit down and just the tones of the piano would, you know, like, wash over me, and I would just, and I remember my mom saying, "Get off the piano," because I would, you know,
you weren't making any
right? But then, like, I would find a chord, and I would find harmony in the midst of, you know, kind of the spacing of the notes on the piano. So I would, like, ooh, and that would bring me a little bit joy. And then I found, oh wow, when you connect that harmony to that, oh, those work together, right? And so I think just the musical tones, it helped me to kind of, like, have a landscape, if you will.
Did you have an active imagination as a child?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the kid in class that, you know, teachers always called my mom. And we're like, he's the smartest kid in my class, but he doesn't do any work. That was me. But I always aced the test. Yeah. So I was kind of bored, I think.
Could keep your attention. But you do. All right. Well, so does something stick out as a pivotal moment about really learning, you know, going through something painful, and then I got to flip the side, I got to flip this coin, and
100%. Let me tell you kind of where that started for me. So I was raised with a very loving mother and a stepfather who came into my life when I was 5 years old.
Are you an only child?
I have an older brother, 2 younger sisters in my immediate
child?
family.
You have a
Middle, older, yeah. You know, and my mom worked pretty far away to provide for us. My stepdad was, he was a long haul truck driver. He owned kind of his own business doing that for a while too. So he was always traveling kind of the 48 states in Canada. And my mom worked like an hour and a half away. So, you know, I would come home by myself and try to have to figure out, you know, and it was a different time. Like you wouldn't necessarily do that with kids these days, but back in those days, it was like kind of fun. And we also kind of, you know, sat in the back of pickup trucks, you know, without seatbelts, and that's kind of how it was in those days, right? So things have changed, but let me give you a kind of a pivotal story for me. So I remember being 9 or 10, in 5th grade, and I decided I'm going to look for my biological father. I knew he was in LA. I knew I had other brothers and sisters, siblings, and things like that on that side, but I didn't know them. We didn't live with them there. So back in the day when there were these big, gigantic yellow books called phone books, I don't know if you guys remember these gigantic things. So I took one out for LA County, and I went to call my dad, which his name is Frank Young. I went to call him, and I looked at every Frank Young in the phone book, and there were 16 of them, and I was like, well, there has to be, one of these has to be my dad. I'm going to find him, right? And so here I go, you know, and this is kind of summertime, so here I go, I'm calling the first Frank. Nothing. Calling the next day, oh yeah, no, I don't have a son named Elijah. I'm doing this whole thing, and then the next day I'll cross off every person I talked to. Well, I got to the 16th one, and I was like, and you know, I'm thinking, everyone's in the phone book, so this had to be my dad. So I'm like gearing up, whatever. I pick up the phone and I call and say, hi, my name is Elijah. Is this Frank Young? Yeah, this is Frank Young. Do you have a son named Elijah? He's like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, you do? Dad, it's me. It's your son. I've been looking for you. In fact, I have the phone book out. I called through everyone. I crossed them off the list. I'm like so excited to meet you and talk to you and learn about you and all this stuff. Long pause, long silence. And I'm like, hello, Dad? He's like, oh, yeah, I don't have a son named Elijah. Click, dial tone. I was devastated. Because, you know, this guy probably thought, oh, I'm just being prank called. I'm going to play along with these kids for a second. And he didn't know that my backstory was that I spent, you know, a week or so calling every single Frank in that phone book to find my dad. And so the elation, the joy from, 9 or 10 years old, if a 9 or 10-year-old would do this today, that would crush me, break my heart to see someone do this. But that's kind of what happened for me. So when he hung up the phone, I realized, wow, this life is really challenging. I mean, it was like a pivotal moment for me because I've always been enterprising. And if you ask my family, they would tell you he was out mowing lawns and washing cars. And I was like, Mom, can I have a remote control car? She's like, if you can get it yourself, and I will come back with 2. You know, bartered and traded and all that kind of stuff. So I was that kind of kid. But this moment was a moment for me that it was kind of a line in the sand. And I basically said, one, when I have kids, I'm never going to allow this to happen. I don't want my children, I do, to have to find their father and know if they're loved or not. But that pain story started to kind of dig a deep well inside of my heart. And I said, I can't let that go.
I can imagine too, because something that's what you just said really struck me is you realize things were complicated in that moment. And so I'm sure in the days, the hours, the minutes that followed, you're like running all these different scenarios of like, well, does he have another kid named Elijah? Or like, you know, what's happening? Did I scare him? Is he nervous? Like, you know, what's going on in his life? How complicated and how deep that could get so quickly. Because now you're like, well, it was just either he's my dad or not. Now it's like, he said yes, but then he said no. And
totally. Hard, right? And so I just basically from there I decided, and it was a critical decision, I decided that I'm not going to allow external things shape my internal life. And in 9 or 10 years old, this became something that was very, very serious to me. And I did something about it. I started reading all types of books that I probably should not have read. Like I read, skip forward a few years, I read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I'm like, 15.
Yeah.
Stuff that like most normal guys were into. And I was active and I was in sports and I was a rapper and I, was really into music. I ended up getting a record deal several, years later in my young 20s and all that stuff. So I was very, very active always, and music, go back to the piano, was a very important part of my life. And it was a part of how I dealt with hardship. And it was kind of how I communicated what I was dealing with.
Has that shifted? Because just doing a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm thinking, and this is coming from my own story, so I'm implying a little bit, but that when you are hit or faced with a lot of pain and you're not really ready to like deal with just that pain point, then you start doing a lot of other stuff. Yeah. And maybe you think it's kind of helping with it, but it's like, well, I'm not really going to go direct to that source right now. So was there a shift in that space too, where you're like, okay, I just got to stay busy right now?
Yeah, I filled in a lot of holes. I mean, I kept myself busy. I was always active, always had friends over, always going to folks' house. I mean, I was that kid that was like an outside in the community, knew everyone kind of kid. Yeah. So, I mean, I was popular in that regard, but it wasn't about popularity. It was about that literally I just immersed myself and I'm an outgoing personality. So I immersed myself in people. Yeah. And, I mean, that still carries with me today. I mean, I think the difference is I have words to define what's going on. I have an internal practice behind, all of these kind of things that when life hits us, what do we do with that? Right.
So it sometimes feels like, and again, I can only speak about my experience.
Sure,
maybe
of course.
Close people that I'm close to. I can't apply for the world. This is how it always is, right? Humans are very complex, but sometimes when you're hit with something, you want to do the exact opposite, and you run towards the exact opposite for a really long time. And it might not be the exact right thing to do, and somewhere you kind of work back, you kind of, and then as we get older, you develop some tools to really go, okay, I don't have to run all the way in the opposite direction. I got some tools to kind of stay here, really be in the present with this thing that just caused pain, and here's how I'm going to climb out or deal with it or heal, right? So talk to me about some of your tools. I know that you have.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of frameworks that and the kind of the way that the book came about is in dealing with all this pain. People used to ask me, you're such a joyous person, how? Yeah. And people that know me are like, dude, you've been through a lot. Yeah. Like, how are you so happy all the time? And people always comment on my energy. Still to this day, they're like, you have phenomenal energy. And I really take that in, and I let that resonate, and I appreciate the value of what people are saying to me there. But because I've been a trainer, I started out as a corporate trainer in kind of a sales capacity, and then I kind of went through the ranks in different companies and learning along the path about how to apply adult learning concepts to teach people, and this is in a business setting primarily, right? To teach people how to do whatever what that company was up to. And, but those tools can be applied to anything. And so what I noticed is that in my own internal practice, this wasn't written down, this was all in my head. This is how I kept myself above the line, if you will, right? And kept myself from drowning internally with pain and despair and darkness and depression and, keep going down that path. Mental illness would be, kind of comes on after all those things. I think a really depressed state turns into mental illness when we lose hope. Yeah. And so I think hope and joy are cousins, and so here's a framework, for example. In the book, I talk about when you're hit with a monumental life pain moment, death, divorce, cancer, job loss, breakups, right? All these types of big things. What do we do? 9 times out of 10, we go to our default. And our default comes typically all the way back to our childhood and how we cope with hard things then. Most adults don't necessarily have a new framework to redefine the stuff that they go through. So I started actually writing them down, getting them out of my head and creating them. The mental practice of the things that I would do often, like going back to the piano. That's one of those things. Listening to classical music, as small as that sounds.
So you think just as you have a default for dealing with something negative, you probably have some defaults to deal with something positive.
100%.
Childhood. And maybe an example of a negative thing, like, well, the first thing that comes up, like we would throw temper tantrums, right? Get my own way and cry and cry and cry. So and I've seen people do that. I know that I've done that. That actually, I think we talked about this on the last show, that I've experienced myself and I've witnessed somebody else when triggered, when something really just hits them in a really hard, horrible, dark place. I've watched a person in front of me turn into a 10-year-old person, and it's like you're seeing, like, that's where the core damage. And I've felt that happen to me. And like my damage is a little more like 12 years old. Comes more in an interpersonal dating kind of relationship, and I felt myself like, I mean, I love communication. I love being able to communicate and get to the heart. And I found myself not being able to communicate at all and going back to a 12-year-old with no tools.
Ooh. No, that's so good. I appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of where the jumping off for me, and that pain, those painful experiences I had. And there's so many more. I don't want to bore everybody with all of that, but I want to give everyone enough to know that, like, you know, I've been through it too. You know, I mean, married, divorced, you know, record deal, no record deal, job loss, failures in life and family. I mean, like, all over the place.
Hurt people,
right? The difference maker for me is I decided to do something about that. Here's like one of the frameworks. We have these things, Dr. Daniel Amen talks about them. He calls them ants. Automatic negative thoughts, right? So these are the default, go back to that default. These are the default states of mind that we just automatically go to. I'm so stupid. I'm this. Man, I suck at that, right? And those things just creep in through our subconscious. Right. And now when pain hits us, we go to that default state, and now we start triggering all these negative things about ourselves, or about other people, about the environment. And then through our subconscious, that's all we can create, because we've decided that that's where we are right now.
Yeah, there's no path where to go.
No one can tell you
stops the conversation.
To feel different. Yeah, totally. No one tells you to feel differently. Because you've already relegated and decided that this is how I feel.
Yeah.
So the only person that can help you to change is you.
And doesn't pain want you to be right?
100%.
Like, you're so right.
Justified and everything. And they shouldn't have done that to you and all that stuff. But it doesn't serve you or them. So what Pain's Promise does is it helps to teach people that pain is an investment. And pain is something that, if you look at it as an investment, then you'll be empowered to do something about it. You won't let those automatic negative thoughts, which is just negative self-talk and all these things, you won't let that destroy you. You'll actually let it empower you. And so there is a promise of pain. And I know it's kind of, you know, I just want to tell all the viewers today that I know it's kind of different to look at pain as an investment, because it's like, you know, wow. You know, I talked to a dean of my old university last week, and his son had passed away tragically in a car accident. You know, this is like a couple weeks ago that I talked to him. And how do you tell someone that just loses their child that there's purpose and a promise in your pain? I mean, come on, let's get real here. I'm not saying, oh yeah, just be joyful, everybody, and get out of your pain. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily great to experience the pain. What I'm saying is great is your perspective and what you can light up. There's so much latent power in pain. Think about the woman who created MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Right, she created that because her child, I don't know if it was her son or daughter, I think it was her son, right?
Sure.
Hit by a drunk driver, and now that's a nationwide organization based on her pain.
So I would say if I was going to translate what you were saying, I'd say, number one, it's an investment, but you can almost guarantee in the moment when you're feeling pain that if you ask yourself, what am I learning, or at least set the precedence for learning. Maybe you can't learn it right now.
Not in that moment. Sometimes you can.
In the example of your
state.
like you've got to breathe. But what's happening is you're developing a special lens that you will be able to look through that nobody else can.
Right.
And now you have some special thing that you can offer or do, like the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I mean, that's an example of that. It might not be in that moment, and you know, you don't want to hear anybody tell you in that moment that something unique and special is going to come out of this, but it will later, and that's the investment we're talking about, or the learning that comes through.
And it's through giving it away. And I do believe that, you know, the joy comes through giving. And so when we experience incredible pain, there is something for us to give away as a result. Pain deposits something inside of us that either makes us bitter or better.
Do you talk about in Pain's Promise about being present as well? Because
100%.
You know, because you can't get to these things that you're talking about if you're living in the past.
If you're living in the rear view, you know, you're going to stay stuck. You have to get into the present. Or worried about the future, right? You got to get right now where you are today. And so back to that framework for a second quickly. There's things that I use, like controlling the ants. I got that from Dr. Daniel Amen, so no credit for me there. But controlling those automatic negative thoughts, right? Because just like ants that crawl around in your house,
They're everywhere.
Once they get everywhere, it's like, now you got the problem. Right? When there's one or two kind of scrounging around, we kind of let them go by. We do that in our own mind. Oh, damn, I was so stupid. One or two go by, but when there's a lot, that's when people around us start to smell the fragrance of stank, negativity on us. And you can kind of feel that palpable expression of people that have got stuff on them. So here's how to get out. Control the ants. You can't just control them by thinking about them. You have to actually replace them.
Let's give them more energy, actually. Look at the ants.
Right. So sometimes, like, I'll go through something that I screw up or I mess up or, you know, get fired or something happens, and I'll go through a list of all the things I love about myself. Literally. I'll play classical music or music that brings me joy or brings me back to center. Sometimes it's gospel music or worship music because it connects me to kind of source idea. Some people call it God or source of power, energy. I think you do need to have some kind of basis point of, like, it's just not me living in this body.
Relatable. I don't care what you call it.
Whatever you have.
I don't think he does either. He, she, they. I don't.
Exactly.
I think it's just connecting to it.
Exactly. And I'm done trying to define for other people what that should be like for them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't consider myself.
I feel like this on that one too.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the idea of spirit, God, like, I just can't imagine a God that wouldn't want us to develop in our own unique legacy kind of way. And so to have somebody else tell you how that should be, like, I mean, I do know that in the Bible somewhere and in a lot of different religious books, like, it's, you know, another being doesn't get to judge, or, you know, they can't compete in judgment with spiritual beings. So, you know, find your own connection. But yeah,
no, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree with that full forward. So, you know, for me, it's like I look at two sides of a coin and say, okay, this side is going to lead to more negativity and me feeling bad about myself, and then trickling that negativity out on other people because that's just the state that I'm in.
Yeah.
But what does the joy state bring? Well, pain sucks, but pain brings compassion. Pain brings hope. Pain brings joy. How do you get there, though? How do you go from this thing sucked, this experience happened for me, and now, wow, my life looks like this now, better or more vibrant or more fragrant, or you have better energy, or you're just light.
Yeah.
You know, you can feel that lightness from people.
Even just watching you explain this, it's like dark, negative, whatever you want to call it. Like, you know, the stuff that's pulling you down. It's weighted.
Yeah.
It's pulling you somewhere where it's so much harder. But when you let yourself, like, experience the light, you know, really connect to the joy. It's here. You didn't mean to do this, but you were like this.
Did I do that?
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
It's lighter. It's lighter for you. You are more flexible to see and experience life and do things without all that weight on you.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I agree. Like, it's so incredibly difficult in this world right now to not touch pain in every step that you go.
Everywhere.
You turn on the news, it's everywhere. It's just downright trauma in many cases, because you're like, how are we going to solve that? Like, you know, I don't trust anybody that's like where they're supposed to be to even take care of that, right? But so then you're like, well, what do I do? Well, what do you do is, like, you got to stay lifted so you can be part of the solution, so you can connect with other people and, like, have this is energetic. This is not.
Yep.
And you can't fight negative stuff with more negative stuff. You're just creating more negative stuff.
You have to replace it. Yes. And I think that's the replace ideal is what I teach all over the book. And so, you know, replacing those ants, doing some type of practice, whether it's meditation, prayer, you know, conscious kind of thinking positive about circumstances. And that can feel like woo-saw, and I understand that. For a lot of people watching, they can be like, well, how do I get there, right? Yeah. I get that. But hold on, because there's a lot more that you could do to really make those transitions. Let's just say someone went through a divorce, right? And they're down on themselves because maybe they feel like they let the family down or whatever else. Maybe it had nothing to do with them, right? I think it's two sides in every coin. But let's just say, for today, that's the state of someone, right? That they just went through a divorce or about to, and they're like, what do I do now? Well, how do you go back into the trenches of your marriage or your life? How do you go back there and say, what was the good? How do you reflect on that person with joy if you're now in a divorce state? Some people do that okay. Most people don't, right? I've got to create some type of friction with you in order to be done with you.
Yeah.
How do we just release people in love and send them in love?
Yeah.
That's the light energy.
And honestly, when you're saying this, all that was coming up for me. It a lot of times meaning let's be okay to be wrong, right?
Totally.
Because again, Peyton, there's a lot of right. I was so right about him. I was right about that. That desire to be right all the time is connected to weight.
Doesn't work.
And what it's not connected to is learning. And learning is a natural order of things. And like when you allow that to sort of flow through to you, like it's easier to let go. I didn't have to. I was totally wrong, completely wrong in the situation. But what did I learn? Now I have something that I can go into the next situation and be more and be more fully present, or
and compassionate. Yeah. And I think that's the thing about pain that when I look at Source, God, whatever you want to call that.
What do you call it?
I call it God for me because it works for me.
Yeah, it's fair to
but people have a lot of weird associations around that stuff, and I use Source for just to say, look, I get it. Yeah. I'm not trying to distract you from what that might mean, because I think people just write you off into some religious thing, and that's not me at all. Yeah. So but when I connect with God, my experience is there's infinite love. If I can't start from infinite love, then I'm already doomed. Because I'm here on earth, and if there's not infinite source or infinite love, then how am I going to get out of the mess myself? So I have to start with some type of center that says, this is going to be okay. Yeah. Even through the pain. So if someone dies, that doesn't mean this is going to be okay. Well, no, that sucks. Yeah. But what's this is going to be okay? Well, where does compassion come from? Pain, often. Yeah. Often.
Empathy.
Empathy comes from pain, often.
Yeah.
Right? And so you find that people that have gone through a lot, if they've dealt with it really well, they have their huge wells of love. Yeah. I'm one of those people because I've been through a lot of pain.
The key word is through too, right? Because you can choose to be weighted and stay in it, and you're still in it, and people feel you. I mean, when you say that, people say you had great energy, Elijah, because you've let stuff go through you. Yeah. You're not carrying it, and people feel that. I'm definitely an empath. Like I feel the heaviness of energy and stuff that's hurting people, and then I start to hurt. You walk into a room and like feel a situation. It's like, there's some pain in here, but when it's light, you want to connect with those people.
Why is that?
Why is it? It just feels good, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it feels good.
And I think a lot of times.
It's safe.
No, go for it.
I could say a lot of things, but I mean, actually, like the words that just came into my head is like, thank God. Like that's where you really feel that you're a part of something, that we are connected as human beings on this earth in this time right now, sitting here, right? It feels expansive, loving, all of the things that like we want and thrive to have as a human being, as the human experience. Like when being with people feels good, all of those words start to like happen.
And so, accessible. And I know we're talking about this through the framework of pain, but it's actually all the stuff we're talking about is the joy. Yeah. Is the joy component. Yeah. That's all the stuff that we can bring to the table and focus on the light instead of focus on the heavy. Yeah. Right? If you have a heaviness in your heart and you carry that with you, how are you going to get out? Now, people say, well, you go to counseling, well, read this book, well, and we all have these practices of like, well, I'm just going to replace this pain with stuff, money, shopping, food, addiction. Fashion, addiction, all of these types of things. Yeah. And those are temporary. So we find ourselves slipping back into whatever the grief or the pain is. The pain's not actually gone, right? And I'm not saying the painful situations, let me just make this clear. Something, I'm not making this trivial. Something bad happens in life to you, family member, something else. I'm not saying, yippee, pain's gone, right? I'm saying there is a joy that covers, smothers, and encompasses and is in all that pain. But the thought process, the mindset of it is what covers it. And what is that? That's the light energy. But it's like, well, so I got to do all this woo-saw, say some meditations and a couple prayers and I'm going to be fine. No, it's a daily choice in everything. Like when I have these negative thoughts, I change it. When I have an experience of like darkness, because that happens to me too, or depressive states, I literally will write down all the things that I love about myself. I literally have, I wish I would have brought it, I have a journal book of like all these amazing things pre-built about myself that I love. All these experiences that are amazing that I love about me. And I'll go back to that place in conversation or something somebody said to me or a moment that I had. It could be 15 years ago, right?
I'm laughing and smiling and feeling joy in every part of me because I actually wrote down that for our social challenge of the week that we did together. Like, so
yay!
We're just like we are so supposed to be here right now, saying this thing, having this conversation, and sharing that. And back to what you were saying, you know. Grief is a tough thing, right? I mean, and grief doesn't look the same for every person, and you got to find your own way. And that's what's so cool about being a human being. Like, we are like creative by nature, like just trying something new. This is why we do social challenges, and it's not me saying, you're going to do this and you're going to have this experience. Well, no, you're not going to have the same experience as you will or I will, but the fact that you try and you start to craft the thing that's going to work for you is what is so meaningful about living on this planet as a human being. Like, we get to decide these things, you know. So I just love that you said that, like, and lately, and I shared this a couple weeks ago, like, I found myself like really negatively speaking to myself in a way that I have never done before. You know, I'll do that. Oh, that was so stupid, you know, every once in a while. But I was really, had allowed a lot of negative talk on a very regular basis to encounter. And my guest a couple weeks ago she's an actress, and she was talking about rejection. And she was like, hey, you know, I got to say positive affirmations all the time. So I set an alarm to like say positive affirmations to myself 3 times a day to shift that stuff out, and it worked. It does work. It sounds silly, and like I know people. The only people that are saying this sounds silly is because they've never tried. Right. But I want you to try. Because I want you to have your own experience with it.
I'm glad you hit on positive affirmations, because when I first heard about them, I thought this was the look into the mirror and say, I love myself. I am pretty. I am special. I am kind. Do you see my face? Wait, I'm trying to go back stoic, right? I am special. I am kind. And he's put on this phony baloney smile. That doesn't work, y'all. No. I'm not talking about that, right? No. But there are, like, I do positive affirmations all the time. I write my own. I record, and we have these modern devices called smartphones, right? Let's use them wisely. And how I use my smartphone is I'll literally record myself talking about myself with I am statements.
And then play it back when
I need it. I'll fall asleep to it when, you know, so our brain waves, when we wake up in the morning or go to sleep, we go between this theta and alpha state. And this theta and alpha state is a really critical time for us, because it's the place where our nervous system starts to shut down, like our autonomic nervous system starts to peak up. And that's the stuff like the autonomic nervous system is the stuff that runs your heart, your lung, your breathing, the stuff that you don't have to think about, right? And that also ties directly into your subconscious. Okay, so when you go in the morning or, you know, late at night when you're about to fall asleep, whenever that is, you go between this theta and alpha state and you're kind of half awake. That's when you should auto-suggest. And so that's when, like, I'll put in my headphones, and that's when I'll play back. So if I had a crummy day, I'll go back and play it then.
Elijah, you just made, and that's why being hypnotized works, because that's exactly what they're putting you in, is that state.
Auto-suggested state. You can do it for yourself. There's no like, watch the, you know, the old school. Sorry, I'm offending you, but I don't know. Does that actually work? I don't know about that.
I've been hypnotized, and that's not how they do it.
But it's always on TV that they show anyway.
Somebody that works for it.
Maybe that works for somebody, but no, it's much more like docile than that. It's like, hey, what happened today that, you know, was a really crummy thing? How was I with myself? There is a position of kindness over myself. And oftentimes, if I don't have a kind state with myself, then how on earth am I going to get rid of negative self-talk? I'm not even kind to myself. I'm going to be kind to other people.
Definitely.
And it's hard because some people are really kind to other people, but they're not kind to themselves. So cultivating this self-love, right? So for me, with my smartphone, I will, you know, throw on my earbuds, and I will wash over myself all the crud off. I'll wash all that crud off that I just spoke over my life that day. Or if, you know, I had a client that, you know, said they didn't want to work with me anymore. And I was like, well, that sucks. After we've been through this and I helped you with that, and then now you don't want to work with me anymore. Like, and I'm taking that personal.
Yeah.
But they might not have just had any money. And they want to say that, like, hey, I got to shift my plan up because I'm running out of cash.
Or you did so well, they don't need you anymore.
That's perfect too. I love that. I love that. But it just kind of was it was a going away. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I took it very personally.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I rewired all of that personal talk that I put in. And these things happen so fast, right? I'll put in like, oh, that's because you're not good. Or, oh, you failed them. Or, oh, something happened. And so then when I go, and this is like 5 or 10 minutes. This is not like all night long. And if you want to do all night long, feel free to do that. I do that with some things.
Yeah.
But literally before I go to bed that night, I will write down all the things that are wonderful about me and the client and how I help them and how I serve them and all the positive things they told me by working with me. I'll recall all that stuff. And then I'll literally write it down and I'll record it as I am statements based on what they said about me.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the best part, we're going to have to switch gears
Sure,
a little bit.
sure.
There's one more thing I want to cover is, I think the best part of you saying all this is if someone has experienced you and they've said, well, he was just born that way. You know? Yeah, right? Like the idea that like we all can be in this space and like develop tools. I think that's what's really encouraging about you sharing that. Like you've got tools, you use them and now you're sharing them with what you're writing about. So yeah, maybe some of us are born with a little bit more a situation that allows us to be more happy. You know, they don't have all of the hardships. Sure, that's true. Or a little bit of a different mindset. Sure, that's also true. But that doesn't mean that we can't work at it. And that's really great for you sharing. And then the last thing that I wanted to say before we should shift gears, and we're running a little short on time.
No worries.
Is I like the idea of when you're doing this work, and it is self-work, of finding a way to involve somebody else. So and I've kind of just discovered this recently with the affirmation alarm clock going off, is so the alarm would go off and I'd be with people or I'd be on a call with someone and I invited them in, like it might have been a colleague and like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now, and they did it for themselves and then we did it back for each other. It's really powerful to hear somebody else reflect on like why they're your friend or why you're amazing. So what do you think about that? Like finding a way to invite people into your...
I think that's remarkable. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a lot of self-work, but this work is encompassed, called, if you're the hub of you know, your greater good or doom, there's always people around us that are kind
our
of
interdependence, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of...
So, you know, with those people, I think it's brilliant to involve them, to even have accountability partners or people kind of to help you, like when you go into a negative state, or, you know, if you've gone through grief, and again, go back to the big stuff. If you've gone through something difficult, gone through, what are you going to do to get out of that? And so the first position is give. So what you just said is like involve somebody else. That's actually a give.
Yeah.
Because when you're saying you're involving somebody else into that process, by them giving you that affirmation back to you, you're giving them an opportunity to create this positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
And now they feel good, even though they weren't the one that was receiving. They're the one that was giving as well.
I also think, I mean, we say like gift giving, like both parties win, like the giver and the receiver. But I also think is like, they're so, it feels like there's a lot of missed opportunities for meaningful connection in the world that we live in because of this and, you know, communicating too much in short form texting.
Looking
and we're
down
not
at screens,
having this moment like, hey man, you're my friend because like you know what, I can count on you. You always show up on time and I really enjoy your laughter and every time you smile you make me feel good. Like we don't have those moments.
No, is there?
You know, and when you do,
make them intentional. It's like it's weird a little bit.
It's a little weird, but it's also like if you really allow yourself to experience what's going on in your body when that's happening, you're like, wow, that felt really nice.
Yeah.
Like that, to be acknowledged and to be seen in such a meaningful way. Like you're like, oh, that's good. That's a good stuff.
Here's another one that involves someone that I think is really good. Go through the alphabet and take every letter and try to put an affirmation behind that letter for the other person.
Ooh,
yeah,
I like that. All right, we might come back to that on the social challenge.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. We are running short on time, so we're going to roll the dice really quickly just so you experience that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about exceptional human encounters. So I did this, and I've been thinking this. So this was a prototype. I think there's going to be a dice 2.2 version coming out. So one has all the senses plus body language, and this one's just meant for us to like talk about that sense. Even between us, we could ask each other weird questions, get to know each other more in the moment,
sure.
In the now, or reflect on an experience that was very relational through that sense of memory or whatever.
I love that. That's cool.
I think I'm going to change them up a little bit. So we got taste, which is sometimes hard. So, and a dare. Since there's not a lot of things to taste in the studio, we can't do a now dare taste. But we could talk about like weird things that we've tasted. Have you ever been dared to like, ooh, like?
Yeah, totally. So my buddy Robert, who's, I don't know if you're watching this, but in the 3rd grade, my next door neighbor had a turtle.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. You know what turtles eat? They eat these little itty bitty tiny shrimps. I love shrimp. As a kid, I loved shrimp. I remember going to Sizzler and stuff, and all you can eat shrimp, fried shrimp, and all the other stuff. Yeah. I mean, I sound like Bubba Gump right now, probably a little bit.
It's fine.
Love shrimp, right? So my next door neighbor, Robert, fooled me into eating these pet food turtle shrimps that he feeds his turtle. Actually pretty dang good, to be honest with you guys. Actually was fine. It was a little salty. It was fine. I might have got tuberculosis or something else as a result, but it was fine. So yeah, that's something that I ate that was not.
I love that.
Really supposed to eat.
That answer is exactly why we do this, because we relate to each other through our senses, and you just went right there, and you're feeling that kid like in 3rd grade.
I remember.
Right now. Yeah. Do you know where he is?
Yeah, I talked to him all. He's like a family member now. Yeah. So we've known each other for a lot of years.
You want to do one more?
Yeah, I'd love to. Am I rolling now?
Oh, you could roll. If you could switch, yeah.
Yeah, I want the energy of like bringing the roll to the table.
Just don't knock Tiny Chef's chair over.
No, why would we do that?
Oh, you were close. All right, we got touch, and we got swap. See, now this is where I think these dice could be a really good, intimate, fun game.
Wow, touch swap.
But that's a whole other show. Like,
okay.
We could swap a story. I also thought it would be funny to like swap an article of clothing. Like if I had a nice pocket, I could, take your pocket square for a minute. You can wear my bracelet.
How about this? I wear this every day.
Bracelets for a minute.
This says "Be Bold." I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it says "Be Bold" on there.
Let's see how. All right, so let's just talk about.
Can I stretch it out a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love stretch bracelets. So how does that feel?
I would rock that.
About that.
I mean, I would
actually
rock that. Thanks.
Yeah.
I got more of those. Keep it.
Yeah, I like it. See, I got a little tiny wrist though.
Oh yeah, about that.
See?
Yeah. Sorry.
About that. It's good. I heard. My friend Dion's gonna love me sharing this story. I heard that in the airport in Dubai, there's like a gold, like a block of gold, like it's worth thousands of dollars, and there's a little hole, and if you can reach through and be able to get the block of gold out, then you win it.
You can take it?
Yeah,
no.
But you got a tree in your hand, and you would have to have like massive strength in your fingers to be able to lift this heavy piece of gold up.
Oh wow.
So I don't know what kind of training you'd have to do to lift it. But
if there's any people out on YouTube that could help us with that, we will share a cut with you.
Train me?
Yeah, I'll be a wrist trainer to get a pot of gold. Let's do that.
You want to do that? All right, awesome. Okay, so moving on.
That's fun. I like that.
Fun? Yeah, it's just I think I'm going to change this one up a little bit. I've got some new ideas to change on that because sometimes, and maybe it's just my mind goes a little dirty. I think this is better. I think I should be selling this as an intimacy tool.
Yeah.
And so when it comes up and I'm like, hey, intuitionally, what do you want to talk about? Some of these get a little dirty really quick. So I think I have to do another version.
I like it.
Because if you've been watching, you've heard me go, well, we're just going to ignore that dice right now because it's not the dice I'm ignoring. Literally, it's
thought.
My mind.
Yeah,
it's my mind. It's what I'm ignoring. So anyhow, sorry.
Thanks for the bracelet, by the way. We're not. We swapped.
Yeah.
You guys saw the swap.
You witnessed it.
you are my witness that she said let's swap. We did. It's mine.
I said swap for now.
I didn't hear for now. Roll the tape back.
And you're locked in. Yeah. All right. So it's a great segue to this.
Cool.
Exceptional human encounter. So I really, really want to give people the juice that we are capable of having an exceptional human encounter with each other. Like I just felt all this joy laughing with you and doing this with you and being here just now. Like we were just being silly. So that phrase, when I say exceptional human encounter, first of all, what does that mean to you? And then second of all, can you give an example of what you think that is? Like something you've experienced lately?
Absolutely. An exceptional human encounter for me is something that just takes you by surprise, that it sits in a different seat of your soul than just a normal everyday run of the
Nice
mill
phrase.
You know, it impacts you overall. And I think there's one I'm thinking about right now, tons, but there's one I'm thinking about right now that I want to share. So I was on this in my high school days, right? I was 16 or something. I went on a trip to Mexico to kind of help build some homes and, you know, play with some kids and basically bring joy over the border, right? Kind of thing. And it was a fun time. Well, we were in a very, very remote area, and they trucked in all the drinking water. Well, because I was a strong, strapping, you know, young man, the woman of the house said, "Hey, Elijah, can you put the next water jug on the thing?
Yeah.
It's heavy for me."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. There's like 40 or 50 kids here that are all kind of staying at this ranch, and we're going out in the community and building homes and helping out in the community. So I'm like, yeah, I can do it. So I pick up this jug of water and totally spill the whole thing all over. And I'm feeling just devastated because I didn't have very much, and we're in a remote area, and it got trucked in.
Yeah.
Right, like
That's
once
precious.
a week. It's a
Like,
precious commodity. There's no like well, and you can't drink some water in certain parts. You know that whole thing. So I feel like I just wasted like a valuable asset for them.
Yeah.
And I'm downtrodden. Kids are laughing, and oh, you're so strong. You dropped the whole thing. She, in the most humble, loving, giving way, silenced all the kids and said, "Elijah, you know what? That's okay. Go get another one. I want you to do it again." After all, and I'm like, no, I don't want to drop. She was like, no, I need you to do it again. And that encounter taught me something about grace, about compassion, and about cutting through all of the internal turmoil with something so precious. That you're going to give me another shot to screw it up. What if I drop it again? Right? What if I had too much something on my hands?
She believed in you.
She believed in me in such a way. And again, all the teenager kids are like, ha, 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 you know, whatever. And she shut them all up by saying, you're going to get the chance. I want only you to do it again. So that was an exceptional human encounter for me.
I feel that. I could feel that when you're telling that story.
Yeah.
Actually.
It's a belief, right? It's something that says, I value you regardless of your mistakes, regardless of this precious commodity or whatever. I value you beyond that.
There's something, you know, I've been asking this question now, let's see, maybe, so you're episode 108, so at least like 10 episodes now we've been asking this question.
Okay.
And what's always there is the now. It's like something that just kind of, everything else just fades away. And in that moment, you know, because you were probably embarrassed, so you're kind of, you're already in the past 2 seconds or the past minutes of like, I just made a mistake. You know, and she's like, no, right now you get another chance to do it again. And I see you and I'm going to give it to you. And like, but there's always, the now is always in that exceptional moment. It just forces you, force sounds like,
I know what you mean.
It allows you to just let everything else slide away and just be right there with somebody.
It esteemed me, it affirmed me, it said all the right things into my young heart that was impressionable, and I'm like, oh, here I go, screwing something up in Mexico, in water, like, you know, it said something to my soul that sticks with me to today.
Yeah. I love it. All right, well, so, just so you know, I gotta show you this card. I swear to God, we established that today. Joy list.
I love it.
Right there?
Yes.
I just love when things like that happen. Like that you talked about it and it was exactly the thing. So let's talk more about it. So this is the moment that I like to issue a social challenge of the week. So this is not me saying, go do it this way, you're going to have this experience. This is me inviting you to have a different experience with yourself and then be able to say, yeah, I did that. You know, I felt that. So I thought this morning, and I want you to elaborate and add to this, is I think it's helpful to have a list of things that bring you joy, that you can reflect on, that you can pull out when life is not so joyful, you know, to kind of get you back into that lane, to like really energize and put good fuel in your tank. So, and I think that list should have like 100 things on it. I don't think you should stop. And what's not on the list, and so, and I'll just use myself as the example, like I go home sometimes and I'm really tired and I We'll play solitaire or euchre. It's a big card game in the Midwest.
Euchres.
Yeah.
What even is that?
Midwesterners know. Fellow Michiganders.
We don't.
They know
LA.
They know
Anybody in LA do euchres? What is that?
It's euchre.
Euchre. See, I don't know what you're talking
when
about.
I play, so it's just a computerized version, I'm always like thinking of my grandfather. I'm always like calling him. So that's the only one that maybe should. That's different. But other games like that are just. I'm barely here. I'm barely present. I'm just playing this game,
Passing time,
and sometimes I'm so wound up. I'm just going to be honest. Like I come home, I'm so wound up from doing that I'm like eating, watching something on TV and playing some stupid game.
Right.
That's not joy. That's total 100% distraction, not ready to like be present. I'm just going to call it because I can call myself out on it. That's not on the list. That game doesn't bring me joy. It fries my brain a little bit. Yeah. The TV and all the stuff. So the list is pure joy. It's like, and you might have to think about like really tuning into like how you felt, like, experiencing your own self smile. That should be on everybody's list. Everybody's list. So,
this is good. Yeah. So I would add to that, curate a playlist on, Spotify, whatever you use, but curate a playlist of music that makes you feel good. I'm going to tell y'all, my favorite song on earth is Pure Imagination from the original Willy Wonka, right?
Nice.
I know, and it's so whimsical and mellifluous. I love that song. So I actually have a playlist of all different types of genres of music, of things that make me feel good.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the big thing to add here is think about all of your senses and how you can encompass kind of this joy experience, this joy list with all your experiences.
Like, does the smell of lavender make
totally
you happy?
If it doesn't, don't get rid of it.
Yeah, right? I love it. Yeah, I love it.
So
awesome.
all the senses. And one thing I'll add to the list is the thing we talked about earlier is do an A through Z on affirmations for yourself. And it's a challenge.
You said that
so I'd add that to the list.
Okay, I like it. So there's 2 social challenges. I like it. 2 social challenges a week. You're going to make a list of 100 things that bring you joy. We're going to include music. We're going to use all the senses to make that list. 100 things. Put it on there. Ask a friend to help you, or have a buddy doing it if you're having a hard time really putting things on that list. And then the second thing, which I really love too, is A through Z, positive affirmations that you can say about yourself.
If you need some help on X, just reach out. I'll help.
Oh, on X? X, huh? I mean, you don't think I could do that after I shared my dirty mind over here?
Oh, yeah, about that.
Anyhow, all right. Well, and if you do them, so as always, like if you take the social challenges, honestly, this is why I do the show. I want to hear from you guys. Yeah, I really want to know that you did it and things are shifting, and you're your own trooper in your life. Like you are your biggest hero, really. Your fan, the hero that's like driving you into triumph over whatever is going on in your life. And these things seem small, some of them are goofy. You're probably like, why is she asking us to do that? But what it will do is allow you to have a different experience with yourself. And if you have a different experience with yourself, you can have different experiences with other people and be more available for all this joy stuff that we talked about.
Yep.
Right? So I want to hear from you. Your social media handle has been on the screen the whole time. I'll make sure that you know how to get a hold of Elijah. You can get on his list to get his book that's coming out, Paid's Promise. But if you take these social challenges,
totally. And I'm here to support you. Reach out to me if you have any questions about anything, because this can sound kind of goofy. And I know today we didn't talk about all of the kind of protocols and frameworks and things about how I help people as a coach or kind of a speaker to deal with these hard things. But if you're like interested, you're like, well, maybe I'll take that on. Give me a shout. I'd love to help.
Awesome. All right. Well, somehow we got back on time because we were a little long in certain segments. I think it's my fault because I was so warm. I got so warm at the beginning of this.
Probably my fault.
Between the chef.
I'm going to go into some negative self-talk right now. Right now, it's probably me.
No, it's all good. I'm really glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the date the book's coming out?
So 7/7/19 unofficially. That's the date that it's coming out. It's self-published, and we'll see after that. But you can pre-order it right now on the site.
Perfect.
So paidspromise.com.
We'll be sharing all those links. So. As always, that brings us to another edition of Relatable, and I just want you to think about this question. What are you doing today that you can help make an exceptional encounter happen for yourself and for other people around you as well? See you next week.
Later.